Welcome to Organizational Leadership 6000 History and Theory of Leadership. I'm AJ Grant, and this is my attempt to do an introductory lecture for you. So, what I want to do is alert you to a number of things. I see that most of you have already signed into the online shell. It's open and available to you, and the class officially starts tomorrow on Saturday. In the shell, you'll find this syllabus. And I think I'm going to be able to pull the syllabus up on this call and go over it with you as I share my screen. And I'm going to present a window. And I'm going to share the syllabus with you. And here it is. Again, in my audio recording, I said that I wasn't going to read the course description. That's there for you to read, and you are all literate and capable of reading this. But basically, this course is taught historically because I think it's important to understand the historical roots of leadership, dating all the way back to Plato and Aristotle, who really began this discussion. Plato, in his Republic, gives us his ideal leader, and Aristotle in the Politics gives his picture of an ideal leader as well. And so here are the objectives. You'll see that it's all about history and understanding different theories of leadership and developing our ability to analyze and summarize these different positions to help to inform how we behave as leaders, followers, managers, supervisors, and so on and so forth. And here's the required textbook, singular, Wren, Hicks, and Price, traditional classics in leadership. Sorry, I still got that wrong. It's traditional classics on leadership. And here's the text. Hopefully all of you have gotten this by now. And we'll start to read the initial chapters. So the first thing is read this whole syllabus. The course outline itself is in the online shell. So the syllabus itself is simply the kinds of things we're going to be doing in this class. If you need to update your understanding of APA style and documentation, we're going to use this throughout the course. So take some time to review that. I've uploaded or will upload an organizational leadership template for APA 7th, which is the current publications manual that we're using for this class, and you will use in all your other organizational leadership classes. So, threaded discussions, there will be 8 of them. And journals, I still need to fix this in, there will be 6 of them. And they're worth 50 points each for a total of 300 points. And the discussions are worth 25 points for a total of 200 points. And there are 2 papers for this course. And I'll give you a first run at each of these papers in 2 separate journal entries. The first is exploring personal views of leadership. And you can see I've given you a template here for you to follow as you think about the theories of leadership that we're studying, the influencing relationship between leaders and followers, the types of leaders and followers, notions of eras and environments, crucibles, those times when we are tested, skills, traits, and learned behaviors. So using those topics as a background, what I want you to do is to describe and analyze your motivations and aptitudes for leading and following in these social contexts. And I want you to do all 4 of these social contexts. That is political or civic, what it means for you to be part of a citizen in a community, a state or a nation, how you lead and follow at work, in your occupation, how you see yourself as leading and following among family and friends. This is all about your social relationships outside of work and school. And then also, if you are involved in other kinds of activities in other organizations and lead and or follow, whether it's religious institutions, the military, sports, etc., etc. So that's kind of the first paper. The second paper is examining the life of a leader. And whereas the first paper is due in week 6, this paper is due in week 8. That gives you time to figure out the lay of the land historically about how we've thought about leaders in the West, at least. We don't really even get to cover Eastern views of leadership that come from Buddhism, Taoism, Shintoism, Confucianism, etc. This is a focus on leadership in the West. And what I'd like you to do is sometime soon decide on a living contemporary leader whom you would like to research. And this could be a political, religious leader, a leader in industry or entertainment. Pick somebody that seems really interesting to you. And I want each of you to do somebody separately. So that means you need to pass by me this particular leader you want to focus on. And what you're basically going to do is analyze this person, what this person says and does, background on this person in terms of his or her preparation for his or her vocation. And I want you to use at least 3 scholarly sources. Both of these papers are going to be short, 4 to 6 pages, single-spaced. So they just kind of capture briefly a kind of biographical and vocational portrait of somebody who you're interested in learning more about. So here are the assignments. 8 threaded discussions for 200 points, 6 journals at 50 points each for 300 points, and then the papers each for 250 points or 1,000 points total. And I'd like you to review RMU's plagiarism policy, which is verboten. The name of the game with avoiding plagiarism and demonstrating academic integrity is when in doubt, cite it. In other words, whether you're summarizing, paraphrasing, or directly citing somebody, be sure to put that person's name at the head of the paragraph. In other words, if you've read something by John Smith, you open the paragraph with what we call attribution. And this is the key. This is really the key to avoiding plagiarism. Even if you don't get the mechanics perfectly right with APA documentation, if you say John Smith, 1991, et cetera, in your in-text citation, argues that blah, 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 blah is the case, then you've already set the reader up to know that you're using somebody else's point of view, perspective, insights, etc., and that this is not your own work. So attribution, it's key. It's the absolute key to avoiding plagiarism. If you have any special needs, do let us know. You can contact the Center for Student Success, and they will evaluate your perceived need, and I will be notified to make certain accommodations for you. And of course, I'm always happy to do just that. So that's the syllabus. You have a copy of that in the course shell under the Start Here button. I'm going to stop sharing that. And let's see, where do I go? Here I am back here. And I think this is still recording. All right. And let me share again. And this time, let me go to the online shell. Now, hopefully you can see this. This is what the online shell looks like from my perspective. If I click on this, it'll show you what you are seeing when you get into the shell. It's laid out nicely, easily. There's this home page area where there are notifications. Course syllabus is over here. Announcements are here, and discussions are here. But the nice thing about discussions is I have them all set up in terms of the weeks. Right now, I've only opened week 1, and we'll go to week 1. And here, I give you an overview of what an era is, and something about our own era, and then some historical information about the Greek classical era. And I open with Arthur Herman's book, The Cave and the Light, Plato versus Aristotle and the Struggle for the Soul of Western Civilization. And where he basically argues that everything in our understanding of history, literature, philosophy, leadership included are footnotes to Plato and Aristotle and developments of their ideas, which is why I like to do this course historically, and I like to start with Plato and Aristotle as the fountainheads for our understanding of leadership in the West. And you can see here are the required readings for this week, chapters 1, 2, and 7 in traditional classics on leadership. And 2 of these chapters feature Aristotle, I believe, and one of them is Plato, or it may be the other way around. Chapter 1 is from Plato's Republic. It's actually 2 features from Plato. Chapter 7 is from Plato's Republic, and chapter 2 is from Aristotle's Politics, where each of them describes their particular view of what constitutes a good leader, right? I have this introduction. I'm going to replace the introduction with this one if I can get this Google's Meet to save properly. I've also included a paper that I recently published with a colleague of mine, Dr. Bob Trotsky, called The Abiding Legacy of Aristotle, Aristotle on Leadership and Education. And that provides some background on how important Aristotle is to our understanding of leadership and leadership education. And also Dr. O'Banion's handout on the 8 pillars of Greek society. And if you click down, you'll see that these handouts are here. Here's the 8 pillars of Greek wisdom. Here's the abiding legacy of Aristotle, Aristotle on leadership education. So that's where the readings are. In addition, what I've pulled together for you is a table of thinkers from traditional classics on leadership. And if you open that up as a Word document, you'll see that what I've done is taken each of these thinkers that are presented in traditional classics on leadership, and I've lined out who they are, when they lived, what their important work or works were, their view of leadership, their view of followers, and the anticipated contemporary theory. So you see, for Plato, in the readings, the primary readings, and all of these texts in this textbook are primary readings. They've been taken from these thinkers and writers throughout history. The primary source for the 2 readings from Plato is Plato's Republic, which is really a dialogue between Socrates and other people who are discussing what the ideal state looks like and what the ideal leader looks like. And it turns out that he's really interested. It's more Plato than Socrates. In fact, some philosophers describe the Socrates of the later dialogues, like the Republic, as plate Soc. That is, um, Socrates is merely a mouthpiece for Plato's fully developed ideas on any topic whatsoever. And in this case, Plato calls for a group of philosopher kings, men and women who would rule the state with an iron fist. And underneath them are the military class, the guardians, and the guardians constitute primarily the military class, but also merchants are included in this class. They're the second level below the philosopher kings, and then the hoi polloi, which is Greek for the many, the masses, who are to obey the philosopher kings and the guardians without thinking. So the view of followers in Plato's Republic is that they should be obedient worker bees. And the philosopher kings are the queen and king bees in the colony. The anticipated contemporary theory, which has fallen on rather difficult times, is the great man or woman theory. That is, what we need in a leader is a person who is in possession of strength and power and insight in order to lead us all as we are obedient to the dictates and the laws of the philosopher kings. Next on the list here is Aristotle, who actually studied with Plato and broke away from him in many ways. And the work that is most important, actually two works, the Politics and the Nicomachean Ethics. His view of leadership is that you can have a monarchy or an aristocracy, but not a democracy. It's really interesting. The Greeks flirted with, before Socrates, flirted with the idea of democracy in Athens. But it failed in many ways, and you can read about that in the Peloponnesian Wars. The confederacy of Greek states fell apart, and eventually Athens was overthrown by Sparta. And this idea of democracy is not popular with the ancients, not with Plato or Aristotle. The fear is that the many, the hoi polloi, the unwashed masses, really are too ignorant to rule. And what you need are, at least for Aristotle, and certainly for Plato, is a well-educated group of people or a single person who can rule and can keep the unwashed masses pretty much in place. But what's interesting is in Aristotle, for the first time in ancient thought, we see what he calls the middling element. And this is the beginning of talk about a nascent middle class. And this would include merchants and warriors and other professionals, politicians, and so on and so forth, who mediate between the monarch or the aristocratic rulers and the hoi polloi, the unwashed masses. So this is the beginning of a long discussion of the place of what is so-called a middle class between the lower classes, the unwashed masses, and the upper classes, who control pretty much the wealth of the state and also the power. Once again, Aristotle anticipates the contemporary great man or great men theory, but there's also something new here. Especially in the Nicomachean Ethics, Aristotle enumerates the traits, the characteristics of a good leader. And he develops what comes to be known as the golden mean. That is the wise, the prudent man or woman avoids the excesses of having too much of something or too little of something. Rather, the person achieves this golden mean in between the two excesses of too much of something, too little of something. So, virtue is this golden mean between the two extremes or the two vices of too much of something or too little of something. If you eat too much, you become obese. If you eat too little, you become anorexic. If you drink too much, you become an alcoholic. If you drink too little, maybe you become a prude, and so on and so forth, with all of the behaviors. And the idea here for Aristotle is that if one makes excellent choices, one develops excellent habits, and from that follows what they call arete, or character, an excellent character in the making. So this handout, you'll see I cover all of these thinkers in the book up through the last thinker that we have, last thinker Sigmund Freud and W.E.B. Du Bois, and issues related to Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels as well. Communism, socialism, the start of modern psychology, and issues related to Black rights and prerogatives. So that's largely my introduction to the class. I think I've covered everything that I want to cover in this short introduction. And I look forward to working with all of you. I wish this were face-to-face, but here we are, still stuck in a pandemic that in many ways precludes that, although, things are opening up, definitely. So I bid you well, and I wish you happy reading and writing, and I look forward to working with you for the next 8 weeks. Take care.